Hello, everyone. Welcome to this slideshow, which is to discuss the 2025-2027 Technical Assistance Grant information. And we are doing this session today, putting a recording of this session up on our website for you to review. That doesn't mean you can't as we'll talk about later, it doesn't mean you can't discuss directly with one of us or several of us a project that you have, but this is to get you started with some, hopefully answering your questions, and we'll tell you how to do follow-up questions at the end. Doing the presentation today, first of all, I'm Gordon Howard. I'm the Community Services Division Manager for the Department of Land Conservation Development. With me today are Josh LaBombard, who is our Southern Oregon Regional Representative and also the lead regional representative for our 9 representatives around the state. And also with us today is Marion Lahav, our Natural Hazards Mitigation Planning Coordinator. I also want to give my thanks to Silas Lobnibe, who is our managing the recording today. So we can go to the next slide, Silas. Okay, first of all, this is our agenda today. First of all, we're going to give you a overview of the Technical Assistance Grant Program, the funding opportunities, our application timeline, the eligible projects, and the criteria with which we will evaluate applications we receive. I should note that the legislature provides us with a certain amount of funds, and we inevitably get many more applications than we have funds for. So we do have to have evaluation criteria to select which projects we'll be able to fund and which, unfortunately, we won't be able to. We'll also give you examples of project categories and examples we have of the categories that of projects that can be submitted by eligible submittees. We'll give you the guidelines for looking at equity issues involving your application, and the Q&A will really be something where you would follow up. We'll talk about that with your regional reps going forward. So we have the next slide, Silas. This grant funding opportunity is one of several from DLCD, the Department of Land Conservation and Development, and it's the one we're going to be talking about today. There are other funding opportunities that can be found on our website, and you can see below the link to that, not a link, but the web address for that page. These particular grant opportunities are what are called from the general fund. The legislature appropriates money each biennium, 2-year period, to our agency, and we call those the general fund grants, and gives us the ability to provide assistance to eligible local governments and other entities to do technical assistance projects which promote land use planning in Oregon and help implement our statewide planning goals and our statewide planning program. We have given that money, which is approximately $1.8 to $1.9 million this biennium. We have several categories. The first one we'll be talking about today is the Technical Assistance Grant funding. Next, we have the Grant Young Memorial Planning Assistance. We won't be talking about today. That's a small grant opportunity available for smaller cities in Oregon and smaller counties as well. That's already been ongoing. We also give grants special grants to the 3 counties in the Columbia River Gorge National Scenic Area to do planning related to the National Scenic Area, which provides additional burdens or requirements on those 3 counties to do planning to protect that area. And finally, we give grants to the Population Research Center, which does from Portland State University, which does population grants for the state, and also a small grant for the dispute resolution program. I should note that the legislature specifically requires funding of the Population Research Center, which does the population projections that have to be used by cities and counties in Oregon for planning purposes, a top priority in our grant fund, and they will take up approximately $400,000 of that $1.8 million. Go to the next slide, please. Our timeline, as I said, this is a biennial program, which means that these grants are for the period from July 1st, 2025 to June 30th, 2027, when the biennium ends, and the next biennium, which will be funded by a new appropriation from the 2027 legislature, would go forward. We opened the applications for local governments and other eligible parties to submit on August 25th. We have a 6-week period approximately to develop your applications and submit them. The applications are due to us by October 10th, a little more than a month from now. We have a 60-day review period where we review the applications, discuss them, grade them against the criteria. And then on December 10th, we will issue decision letters notifying applicants of the grants that we were able to fund and the ones that we won't be able to fund. At that point, the process, we won't be talking about that today, but the process then is for the local governments to implement the grants, to carry out the work, and all the work has to be completed by June 30th, 2027, and at least to the point where all the payments have to be made under the contracts. If there's any money unspent as of June 30th, 2027, it goes right back into the Oregon State General Fund. So we can go to the next slide, please. Okay, so eligible applicants here. We have the most common eligible applicants we have are a city or a county in Oregon. And however, there are some additional things. Cities and counties can jointly submit an application. Multiple cities and counties can submit an application as long as one jurisdiction is responsible as the contact. A council of governments can submit an application on behalf of one or more local governments. A recognized tribal government or group of tribal governments, and those are the governments recognized, the tribes within Oregon with tribal trust lands and recognized tribes can apply. A regional planning agency such as Metro can apply, and a port district can apply. So we can go to the next slide. And at this point, I'll turn this over to Josh LeBombard to handle this information.
Thank you, Gordon. So DLCD uses a certain set of evaluation criteria when we're reviewing applications. Each biennium, we are always oversubscribed, so meaning that we have more applicants applying for funds than we can award. So we need to develop and use evaluation criteria to be able to prioritize and rank those projects. While we do have quite a bit of flexibility, we do keep to the list of priorities to the extent that we can. There's a few mandatory priorities, and then there are some that provide weight to the applications. So of the mandatory priorities or evaluation criteria, the project objective and description is really important. So that just means that applicants should provide clear objectives and the scope of work when they're submitting their proposal, so that we know what type of project you're looking to do and what you're looking to accomplish. We're also looking for whether a grantee has capacity to be able to provide assistance and manage the project. This year, we are offering for the first time an opportunity for local jurisdictions to have DLCD manage grants. While we've done that with housing grants in the past, we haven't done that with our technical assistance grants. So for smaller communities or communities that would rather have DLCD manage a grant, that opportunity is available, but there's still usually going to need to be some interaction with local government. So being able to demonstrate your capacity to be able to fulfill your obligations and participate is important. And then the last mandatory piece, stay on that one, Silas, thanks. The last mandatory piece is the equity and inclusion piece, and we'll talk about that later on, but your application needs to demonstrate a commitment to inclusion of priority populations. Some of the non-mandatory ones have to do with whether the proposal advances regional solutions teams' priorities, whether it involves multiple jurisdictions, and whether there's any leverage. So either in-kind resources or a cash match can be contributed to the project by a local jurisdiction. None of those are mandatory, but they are things that help us balance out and prioritize the applications. You can go to the next one, Silas. So for eligible projects, you can find more detail on all of this information in the packet that we have on our website, which accompanies the application. The packet goes into a bit more detail on the eligible projects, and we will as well in this slideshow. But as far as priorities are concerned, first priority for our technical assistant planning grant funding goes to economic development. And then the second priority goes to the next 6 items on the list, items 2 through 7 here. That's planning for natural hazards and climate change, resolution of a local or statewide planning issue, public facilities planning, comprehensive plan in implementing code updates, planning for cultural resources, and identification and protection of environmental resources. So we'll go into some detail and provide some examples on the subsequent slides now on each one of those. You can go to the next slide, Silas. I'll turn it back to Gordon here.
Thank you, Josh. If you have been with us for a few biennia, you'll remember that it used to be we had a category in these technical assistance grants for housing projects to develop to do housing planning. That is no longer part of this program. The legislature has provided a separate and very generous funding program for planning for housing, as well as many requirements for local governments to do that planning. And so this program is not intended, does not have as a priority for projects that would propose, say, a housing needs analysis or capacity analysis. There's a separate funding source for that, so they're not part of this program. The number one priority, as Josh said, was economic development. Since housing, it used to be housing and economic development were, some years housing was more highest priority, other years economic development. But now economic development has the top item here, and because this is really the main funding or only funding source for communities that want to do what are called economic opportunities analyses, which are an attempt to provide planning to provide enough land for both employment opportunities and economic development, increased tax base, commercial land, industrial land. Other aspects of economic development where we've seen projects in the past include a targeted industry analysis where the objective is economic diversification, a wetland inventory and mitigation plan for an industrial site. We'll be talking about that under a later priority as well, but this is related to economic development. Redevelopment toolbox or ways to redevelop a commercial strip that's available for use by multiple jurisdictions. We've seen that kind of project in the past. A citywide public facilities element, which is an attempt to, once again, we have some overlap with another one of our categories, but an attempt to make sure that public facilities are available that are resilient to climate change hazards for economic development. And the intergovernmental agreement to carry out a public facilities plan to promote economic development. These are examples. There are other ideas. You're encouraged to be creative for projects that will promote economic development through land use planning in Oregon. If we go to the next slide, Silas. The next slide will be handled by Marian Lahav. Marian, go ahead.
Hi, so the natural hazards and climate change category is very broad, excuse me, because it includes lots of pieces of resilience. It covers natural hazard mitigation, climate change mitigation, which is essentially greenhouse gas reduction, pollution reduction, climate change adaptation, and pre-disaster recovery planning. You can see from this list of example projects how broad the category is. You can create and update plans. You can incorporate new data and information into plans, policies, and land use and zoning regulations. You can do other studies and activities that we haven't even thought of that would support your community's resilience. So the links for each one of these are projects that we think are a good example of each of these things that have been done in Oregon before. And in addition to doing any kind of standalone projects under this category, I would encourage you to think about how natural hazards mitigation, climate change mitigation, climate change adaptation, and pre-disaster recovery planning could figure into other projects that you would think of doing for a technical assistance grant, and include that aspect into your other plans and projects. So this is wide open, be creative, and take care of your communities.
Okay, thank you, Marion. The next category we're going to talk about is resolution of a local planning issue, which would provide guidance for other jurisdictions. Examples we've come up with is if specifically a county wanted to look at a non-resource land designation process, and these are things that have been proposed in the past, and some have been done. The second one is one that we currently have a project, the utilization of a collaborative regional problem-solving process. We have a project from Coos Bay and Coos County, which is proposing this for an unusual problem or situation in the county where there's a series of statutes that promote what's called the regional problem-solving process, which if you have any questions about, we can show you where those are in the Oregon Revised Statutes and provide more information. Another great example, we'll talk about a little more too, is voluntary periodic review. Periodic review used to be an entirely separate category for grants in this program way back now 16 years ago. The legislature removed that funding during a period of recession and has never restored it. And so there is no more what is called mandatory periodic review, or it's not going on in the state right now. But we have had 3 jurisdictions that are completed or have underway what's called a voluntary periodic review program, which involves looking at a comprehensive plan in a comprehensive basis, which is really the best way to update a comprehensive plan to meet the needs of today rather than the needs of 20, 30, even 40 years ago. We have also other ideas. We have counties east of the Cascades that now have the opportunity to do planning for renewable solar energy development in their counties. That was enabled by rules that our commission passed last year, and we would encourage Eastern Oregon counties to consider applying for a grant that could do a program that could be used by other counties for similar programs. And equitable engagement, we have an example from Clackamas County on that. And this is an area, once again, to be creative and think of other ideas that would be good examples for other cities and counties, and maybe even tribal governments in Oregon to use as examples going forward for similar issues in their communities. If we go to the next slide. Josh, you want to do this one?
Yeah, thanks. Regarding public facilities, once again, these are just example projects, and once again, we encourage folks to be creative with the types of projects that they're proposing. One of the most common public facilities related project that we receive applications for are just for master plans. So that would be like a water master plan, wastewater master plan. What we also could be looking for here would be some type of infrastructure refinement plan, things that are kind of drilling down a little bit deeper into an existing plan, looking at ways to facilitate development at a higher capacity. Or regarding like the natural hazard side, we could fund a study to look at critical facilities and community lifelines to allow continued operation during and after a hazard event. And then we can get down more into the financing piece where just, either a general infrastructure financing plan, laying out different options of financing, or even more specific, looking at getting involved or analyzing the formation of a reimbursement district. And then the last example we have here was provided by one of our public facility specialists. Something that we're looking to avoid here in the state are moratoria. So if you are coming close to or are in a current moratorium, some type of avoidance study or a study to get the community out of the current situation that it's in would be something we would definitely support. Silas, you can move on to the next one.
Okay, this back to Gordon Howard again. Another area is updating comprehensive plans and implementing codes. And this is if someone doesn't want to go to the full length of periodic review, but if there are areas of their comprehensive plan that are out of date. And once again, this is not for housing areas where a city's zoning code or comprehensive plan provisions regarding housing are out of date. That's handled by other grants. But if there's some area of your code or your plan that is out of date or could be streamlined or needs some changes to comply with changes in state law, this would be the place to do that. And once again, a voluntary periodic review program would be something that would fit well into this category. We go to the next slide. Okay, this is a new one for this year, cultural resources. Our commission adopted last December, but is now reviewing and readopting rules to protect cultural areas in Oregon. And those are cultural and archaeological resources, primarily but not exclusively important to Oregon's tribes and tribal governments. Local governments have not done planning for these issues in many decades, if at all. And these rules, while they do have some specific requirements regarding notification of tribal governments of applications and consideration of tribal applications for what's called a landscape area of cultural significance, which I'm not going to get into what that is at this point. The rules specifically allow and encourage a local government to work with a tribal government to come to a agreement or memorandum of understanding on how to protect cultural and archaeological resources within that jurisdiction. And we would encourage local governments to consider that as an option, and also tribal governments that may apply for this. And this would be a partnership between a local government and tribal government. The additional rulemaking is happening now, and there are some webinars and open houses scheduled, and you can see that on the screen. And like I said, this will obviously be available to you on our website, and you can hopefully you can attend one of those if you're more interested in this type of a project. If we go to the next slide. Our last new category, identification and protection of environmental resources. And in this area, we really wrote before some last minute happenings at the legislature kind of refocused things. We were thinking that there, especially with wetlands and identification of wetlands, particularly but not exclusively within the Willamette Valley, that it was local governments needed resources to do what are called local wetland inventories to inventory and propose protection for wetlands so that development of housing, industrial development, any kind of development would know where to avoid where there were wetlands, because that's one of the biggest issues we've been hearing for local governments is not necessarily wanting to develop in wetlands, but not having the knowledge of where those wetlands are and not having the money or resources to determine where those wetlands are on project properties that could otherwise be developed. However, once the legislature at the last minute in the last bits of the session appropriated $500,000 specifically for local wetland inventories and other wetland projects that have to do with development of housing. And so those, if you have a concern about wetland areas and areas that you would want, otherwise the city would like to see developed with housing, you would need to apply under that program, which will be sending information out to local governments about that once we have finalized. It's a brand new thing. It's like I said, it's $500,000 exclusively for that. However, there may be situations where there are wetland issues for areas that are not related to housing. For instance, an industrial land area or commercial land area or some sort of public facilities area where a local wetlands inventory or other wetland program for protection would be necessary before development could occur. And so those kind of projects and proposals could still be submitted under this priority. If you have a mixed area that's both housing and economic development, I would that would need to be submitted still in on the other program that we'll be providing more information for in the near future. If we go to the next slide. At this point, I'll turn it back over to Josh.
Thanks, Gordon. So beginning a couple biennia ago, applicants in all technical assistance grant categories have been required to propose outreach and community participation plans that reflect inclusion of priority populations identified in the State of Oregon Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Action Plan. The priorities populations include Black and African American community members, Indigenous, Native American, or Native Alaskan community members, persons of color, community members with limited English proficiency, people with disabilities, extremely low income and or homeless community members, and other locally identified underserved priority populations. So with the application packet, in the application, we provide a link to basically it's a guidance document for our grant program that will lay this out a little bit more in more detail. But essentially what we're wanting to see is a description of anticipated, in addition to the identification of the priority population, a description of anticipated impacts and outcomes, including benefits and burdens on those priority populations. An outreach and public engagement plan designed to involve impacted priority populations, including specific goals and a plan laid out for tailored participation. And at the end of the project, once it's concluded, we're looking for a post-project evaluation of basically telling us how you felt it worked, what lessons were learned from the project, and what you do differently, essentially. Silas, you can go to the next slide. And also links are provided in both the application packet and in the guidance document to our toolkit, which is our equitable engagement toolkit, which was concluded fairly recently. And we also have a couple of training sessions that are on the website. That's going to be the document that we're pointing folks to begin your equitable engagement project or your plan. And additional guidance is also provided on the website in both the application and in the packet itself and in the guidance document. You can go to the next slide, Silas. So just kind of wrapping things up here, we just felt like it would be worthwhile putting a couple best practices. And since I'm a regional representative and know the level of work that we do interfacing with local governments, we definitely encourage you all to meet early with your regional representative. Either pitching the project, or if you already have a project in mind, to be able to kind of go over in a little bit more detail the project. The regional rep can provide advice and examples of other projects that have been submitted and have been successful, and we can also even assist with the application. And as you can see with that little asterisk on there, all the interaction you have with your regional representative does not guarantee your project will get funded, but it will provide you a little bit more certainty that you're submitting an application that we're going to be able to deem complete and be able to evaluate. And regional representatives can actually review your completed proposal. So once you have your proposal complete, if you want to make sure all of your I's are dotted and your T's are crossed, you can ask your regional representative to review that and provide some comments. And then the last thing, and this is some common sense, but just to reiterate it, you really want to meet as many of the evaluation criteria as you possibly can, and especially the mandatory ones. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Gordon, and Silas, you can flip this slide.
All right. Well, thank you, Josh and Marion. I wanted to put this information here is the basic contact information, first of all, for me. And your regional representatives, please see our DLCD webpage for your assigned representative, and there's contact information for one of those 9 very professional, competent, and excellent DLCD employees who can help you in your region with your proposed application. Marion's information is there as well if you are interested in an application involving natural hazards mitigation. And also, although she wasn't on this presentation today, Amanda Punton, who is our natural resource specialist, is available for any information or questions you might have about a project, and specifically one involving environmental issues. For general grant communications, if you have a general question, not sure where to send it, please send it to that address there. And Silas, who has been running this program for us, this slideshow, will forward it to the necessary person to answer your question. And because this is a recorded program, we obviously can't take questions right now, but we encourage you to reach out with us, any of us here, or to the general grant email with your questions and or concerns or comments, and we will answer them promptly. Thank you very much for listening to this presentation. I hope it's been of use to you, and we would actually appreciate any feedback on that. If you think this went well, or you think it needs some improvement, we'd be happy to take your concerns or your comments. We're very interested in that as well, since we're not offering a live program this year. So thank you very much. And with that, we'll end the recording. Have a great day.